Hello, everyone. My name is Aaron Christensen. Welcome to Horror 101 with Dr. AC, and this is Scare-A-Thon 2023, benefiting the Women's Reproductive Rights Assistance Project. We're about halfway through October at this point. The link to donate is right below in the description. Please make a contribution today because we've got lots of awesome shows that we've been racking up, and tonight's is no exception because we're going to be talking about Hellbender from 2021. And I am bringing in my awesome panel to chat about this release from the Adams family, which just makes me laugh that they're the Adams family. But let's say hi to Jon Kitley, Cati Glidewell, aka the blonde in front, and Aaron AuBuchon. So yes, let us discuss Hellbender from 2021. Cati, where did you encounter this for the first time?
I watched this on the big screen at Telluride Horror Show, and Zelda, Jon, and Toby were there. So I got to watch the Q&A. And if you are inclined to watch the Q&A, it is actually on the Blonde in Front Facebook from October of 2021. And you might see a couple clips from my YouTube page from October of 2021. Plug.
Well, and you're actually you're heading to Telluride, and their newest film is going to be screening there, correct?
Yes, Where the Devil Roams is going to be screening, and Zelda will be in attendance for that one.
Nice. Jon, where did you come across this one?
I had seen their earlier film, The Deeper You Dig, I believe on Prime. It just stumbled across it, and I really liked what it was. And then when Hellbender came out and found out that it was the same filmmakers, immediately watched it, and it blew me away even more than Deeper You Dig.
And Aaron?
Yeah, I stumbled across it on Shudder, and it sounded 1,000% up my alley. And it's one of those that, we talk on our show sometimes about how once you get to know something about the filmmakers, it makes the experience even better. And this was one of those where I loved the film as soon as I saw it, and then once I found out how it was made and by whom, I loved it all that much more.
Yeah. I've had that experience numerous times this month. Films like Sator, films like The Outwaters, just like where the story behind is as interesting as anything you're seeing on screen. And I just love the fact that this was done during pandemic, and it's like, well, we're in our little bubble. Why not just go make our movie? But it doesn't feel like a bare bones pandemic movie. It feels really organic, and it feels well thought out. It doesn't feel like something that couldn't have been done at any time, at any point in time.
It feels to me like a film where it has to be stripped down, and that, and it's such smart filmmaking because every character seems consequential. It doesn't feel like there's not enough people in the film. So it's just one of those things where you don't know if you watch it that it's a pandemic film and that it's a lockdown film. But once you find out that it's that, you're like, wow, they're really good at this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Plus the fact that if you just look at the credits and you see the same, the family, the Adams family, they all co-directed, they all co-wrote, they're doing the editing, they're doing the music, they're doing this. And you're like, well, damn, well done you.
Yeah. And I didn't know anything about the Adams family prior to that. I mean, my first clue to it was when the credits ran, and I went, oh shit, it's all of them. Okay, that's who's making this movie. But as you said, Aaron, like when you go back in your head, then you're like, of course it's all of them. And of course they're incorporating all of these things that they do really well. But the basic, and I was trying to think of like what the synopsis for this film is really. It's a mother and a daughter. They're alone in a secluded cabin, and the daughter is, quote, sick, and that's why she's kept isolated by her mother. But as the time goes on, we find out that the sickness, or is it a sickness, goes much deeper than just a pandemic or a COVID virus. It's a mythology that stretches on and on and on. And I'll throw up the spoilers banner, even though this is just the opening scene. But that opening scene of that witch or whatever she is that can't be killed is something I don't think I've ever seen before. I've seen so many witches be, on screen, be burned and hanged and, beheaded, but I have not seen one where they're strung up and they just won't die. And then they explode like a firework up into the sky. And you're like, nope, she's still not dead. And she's really pissed now.
The one thing that I liked about it is just their take on witchcraft. It wasn't what we have come to know as witches and all this stuff. It was very radically different. The mythology about it, we knew they were witches, but we didn't have any idea of what kind or what they were doing.
Right.
And I love the originality of that.
Well, we soon find out what they can do. There's a scene, since we got the spoilers banner up, there's a scene where they cross paths with a man who's just out kind of like wandering in the woods. And you find out the kind of power that these witches have. And what an extremely well done sequence from top to bottom, including the visual effects.
Mhm.
Like, from a DIY, studio, I wouldn't imagine like the production values on these are really impressive.
Well, I feel like they did a smart thing, right? Like they had whatever budget they had, or they had whatever time they had, and they invested it in a few things. It would have been easy with the kind of lore that they established to try to do more things. But I think the brilliance of this film is in how they choose to be economical with visuals, and yet the thing is visually rich. So one of the things I love about this film is the levitation scenes, of which there's at least 2 and maybe 3, but there's, it'd be convenient it'd be easy to do a levitation scene in After Effects where you have something floating up, but instead they do a really smart thing, which is we always see the levitation, whatever they're levitating, from the point of view of the levitated object. And it gives it a kind of magic that it wouldn't have had otherwise. It's just such smart filmmaking. I want to give every one of these people a fucking hug. I love them.
Well, and that's one of the things. I mean, this is what an independent film done well with true craftsmanship. This is what it looks like. I mean,
Yeah.
I think if I recall, I think the budget on this was maybe 25,000, and I may be going a little higher than that. But I mean, the house was in Deeper You Dig. As you said, every family member, even the gentleman who's in the store is, I think, the father of Jon Adams. So he's a family member. And they work with all the people. There's similar people that were in the Deep Gear Dig in this. So they have, people that they work with that know their stuff. And I mean, the majority of it's outside. You have just like what I think 4 locations maybe, and then most of it is like in the woods. But it's the drone shots, like you said, the special effects that were just done really, really well by the family and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, when I see this, I think, why can't other films that are independent be like this? It makes me mad.
Well, I mean, the truth is that there are so many of these independent films that do get made that are done by, people, just a small group of people creating something on their own. Sometimes it's just one person, writing, directing, editing, doing the cinematography. But those aren't the ones that get the big push.
Yeah.
It's like you have to win the lottery to be that one that some studio gets behind and goes, here, we're going to really push this out to an audience. But I say halfway through this month already, I've discovered so many of these gems that are that kind of small, contained, but incredibly powerful and incredibly proficient. Like there's no apologies for their lower budgets.
Well, and then you've got the music. I mean, that's Toby and Zelda, and the makeup that they do with that. It's like you've got these pocket, and it's not like a full song. You've got this like little pocket, like pocket punk songs that you just get a taste of it, just to like water your mouth. It's like, I want more. I want more. It's like, nope.
Before I finished my first viewing of this, however long ago that was, I had ordered the soundtrack LP. Yeah, it's so good.
Now, do they do full length versions of it?
Yeah.
Of all the songs? Okay. So it's not like They Might Be Giants where you just get like a couple lyrics and you're like, and that's all you need, right?
But I think that I love this movie so much too because I used to have this big quote that I kept in my office on the wall, and it was not to be too pretentious, but it was a Cocteau quote, and it said, "Quote," and it said, "Film will only become an art when its materials are as inexpensive as pencil and paper." And I feel like this film is like the promise of some things I love come to fruition. The shot on video boom of the 80s and 90s is so amazingly raw and authentic and often profoundly inept. This is not. And this also, I feel like it develops an auteurism that eschews the old kind of auteurism, the kind that always says this one dude is who made the whole film. And this shows a collaborative auteurism, where a whole group of people come together in this like pressure cooker, but they do it in an organic and casual way where everybody's throwing ideas into the pot. Everybody has equal say. And we see this amazing result. They always say you can't make art by committee. And I say, watch Hellbender. You know, you can.
Depends on the committee.
Yeah, that's
Depends on the family.
Yeah.
I want to praise Zelda Adams' performance. I mean, the whole film is basically a witchy coming of age, story with that, in the woods and all that stuff. But to see her, and it's just in a short amount of time, like her, once you get that knowledge, kind of like that taste of the apple and stuff like that, you can't go back. And she does such an amazing job going from this like tomboy, innocent kind of thing to then at the end, spoiler, I don't know if it's really a spoiler, but just being this like fierce hellbender, like ready to take on the world. And now she's in control and she has the power. And it's just like in a 6-month time period that we kind of gathered. And it's like, it's incredible. Like she does such an amazing job.
Our woman who plays the mother, I'm blanking on her name right now, but she reminds
Toby Poser.
That's Toby. Okay. She reminded me of like a Colleen Dewhurst, where just such gravity and power and very subtle. Like she didn't need to, be very demonstrative. Like she looked like she was carrying all this weight of everything that she was doing, both as a hellbender and as someone whose progeny is now the next hellbender. And I love that mythology of, winter eats spring and spring eats summer. And it's like, it's so like there's a spell, it has a spell feeling to it. But also like the lyrics, like the first song we hear is "Women Cut Women," like this set to this like pounding riff. And I'm like, wait, what are we saying here? One
of the first things I wrote down on this most recent watch, and this is probably the 4th or 5th time I've watched this film. I just love it. Have I made that clear? Have I gushed? But one of the first things I wrote down was that it's really easy, and I've done this before in my own sort of creative work, to fall so in love with lore and world building that it becomes heavy with that, and that it forgets that lore has to be in service of the characters. And man, like you said, it's like the stuff feels that, the stuff that they talk about, the lore that they talk about, where you hear the songs that sound like spells, the winter eating spring and so on and so forth, or the winter eating fall, all of that is entirely in the service of the story that they tell. Every single bit of it. And I just love that so much because this is a lore heavy movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think the cool thing about this one is, like we had said about independent films are great when they're original and everything. And some of the movies that we've talked about on me and Aaron's show is movies are even better once you get to know all the behind the scenes and stuff. But this works both ways because this movie, even if you knew nothing about anybody in this, the movie is still highly original, highly effective, and well done. The cast is great. But then once you learn more, you're just sitting there going, are you kidding me? And it's not just like a husband-wife team. No, it's literally their whole family.
Yeah.
And they're doing everything. And again, the originality in this, because we've seen hundreds and hundreds of witch movies, like Aaron, to your point on how the opening sequence, but just the little spells that the mom is doing to see her where her daughter is, and eating maggots or something for a little bit of power. And like you had mentioned, Aaron, that Toby's performance is very subdued, but yet can be threatening and can be somewhat loving to her daughter when she's kind of joking around. But there's that borderline where you're like, she could kill anybody at any given time without notice, but she rails it back, and she doesn't seem that intimidating or that threatening.
What you said, Aaron, the idea of the small economical visual effects, when she places her hand against the wall and the key slides out of the back
I
of her
love
hand,
that.
I'm just like, you think there's nothing new under the sun, and that's something I've never seen before, never even conceived of it. And I'm like, what a great idea. What a great device.
I also love that, so this movie, the story works, right? You get engaged with Izzy's story, and I think that this is profoundly the story of Izzy, and I think that that is most obvious in the fact that the mother is never even named. We don't know her name. She is the role of mother. She's not whatever her name is, right? And that's critical to the story. There's all these amazing visual effects. There's a really nice kind of monster story here. But there's also a story about generational identity and the evolution and the idea that no matter how good your intentions are, when you arm someone with new information, they're going to use it however they use it. And it doesn't matter what your past brings to the table to change that or to modify that. So it works on like 3 or 4 different levels as well. Kind of to John's earlier point, there's a fun, just monster sort of witch movie in here. And there's a thinking movie in here too. And you can like both or either.
Plus how you try to shelter someone from what you think is going to happen. And by doing that, you in turn cause it to happen.
Yeah.
As I was watching it, I was like, okay, I'm a seasoned horror fan, and I am always looking for weird offbeat diamonds in the rough. And I was wondering how do you folks think this will land or does land with, say, the general horror population? It feels like you said, Aaron, like it's a real heady type of movie, and it isn't action packed. There aren't like kills every 5 minutes.
I imagine that the people who are holding their breath for the next installment of the Art the Clown franchise film maybe not land so well. No offense to that, but I mean, I think that there's a kind of horror fan out there that's looking for a particular thing, and I don't know that this film is that thing. But I know that a lot of people I talk to seem to like it.
Yeah, I mean, I was reading the comments. It's like it does seem like, I mean, there are the few people. It's like, oh my God, nothing happens, or why do we have to have, it's somebody found this one absurdly political, and I was like, interesting. Yes, it's female heavy, but I don't think that there's an agenda at work here.
I would be really curious to hear I'd like to hear that dissertation spin.
I also would, as a female, I would also like to hear that argument. Like, please enlighten me.
Yeah, right.
Mansplain Hellbender to me, sir. Please let me. I imagine this was a gentleman who thought this was...
I was going to say, there you never quite know what's going on in the comment section of the Shudder page, but it's certainly entertaining and occasionally edifying.
I would like to think that the opening would catch a few viewers enough to get past to the story, but I don't know. Your modern fan, I could see him getting a little bored with just the 2 female characters there and not giving it a chance. And I think that's the biggest problem with streaming services is if someone doesn't like it, they're off and running to the next film without really giving it a chance. And that's a very sad state, because this film is more than worth your time.
Yeah.
Well, I would like to talk to somebody about its construction too. Like I would love to have that conversation, because as somebody who's fascinated with that stuff, one of the things I love is when early in the film, they basically give you the entire tonality of the film or the theme or even the plot. And I feel like the first scene where we hear them talk, where Izzy's in the bedroom in the foreground, and then the mother shows up in the background and the light pops on and they have that conversation about going to town. That's the whole movie. Yep. Everything you need to know about those characters and their relationship, the fact that Izzy she only briefly looks back at her, and then she's sort of off in the background, fuzzed out. And then she says, "I love you," and the lights go out and she disappears. And then you're left with Izzy to contemplate. And watching that and I was going, that is the whole film right there in one 3-minute chunk, you know, genius, just really well done.
Then they even replicate that at the very end when Izzy says,
Yep.
I'm going to town, Mom. You need anything?
Yeah, I'll take some bass strings. Okay.
Yeah.
There is, I was curious about what the politics of this film are, though, in terms of it does start off with a scene of a bunch of women stringing up another woman. And then we have the pounding beat of, you know, the tune "Women Cut Women" and "I'm not your maker, but I will destroy you." And I was like, what is, you know, like, I was genuinely curious. I would love to sit down with the Adams and be like, so what actually is being said here, or is it just open to interpretation?
Yeah, because I wrote in my notes that one of the things I really enjoyed was after the scene where the mother reiterates to Izzy, "You can never be around anybody." They kick right into that song Armageddon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and I was like, I don't know what that means exactly. Does that mean her? You know, does that mean that? Because in a lot of ways, Izzy lives in a world where humanity is flattened down to one person. I mean, there's only one person that she interacts with ever. So for her, it's like if her mother disappears, there's nobody else on earth for a second while she decides whether or not she's going to walk past this taboo, you know? So she's kind of living her own personal, like, one person Armageddon. And I'm just reading into it because that could be not at all what they meant by that.
Well, but then she does venture outside of that protective place, and she has her encounter with her neighbor, and something awakens and something is spread. And, you know, she is, I can't necessarily say infected, but she's awakened. Something inside of her bursts. Yeah. Something inside of her bursts free. And
then I think she starts to realize that basically she's been lied to.
Yeah.
And that's
in such a smart way too. Again, the way that they managed to introduce that element that they've built that lore on, the way that they get it actually into her physical mouth is such an obvious, and yet I was like, there it is. That's exactly how you would do that. That makes perfect sense.
Well,
Yeah.
And how many times do we hear that from parents that, like, I'm telling you a story, you know, that isn't true, but it's to protect you.
Mhm.
It is to, and it's also protect the parent from having to have that difficult conversation.
Yeah.
And then, you know, to your point, when the child finds out they've been lied to, a schism forms. And you're like, I don't know that I can trust you the way that I did. And I don't know that I love you unconditionally the way I used to. And I feel like the parent is coming from a place of good intentions. You know, I don't want my child to be afraid, or I don't want my child to get hurt, or I don't want my child, in this case, to hurt anybody else, you know, but, you know, in trying to keep the monster in, you just make the monster turn against you.
Yeah, it's a very smart movie because, again, you could use that theme and change it out with so many different elements or thematic stories in there, but it's a basic storyline of this mother trying to protect her daughter from what she thinks could happen,
Right.
but in doing and putting that protective bubble around her made it happen. So
Yeah.
it's really, really well done. And I love the fact that you don't have the typical confrontational fight, like, oh my God, you've been lying to me all this and I'm going to run away or whatever. They have these very smart conversations, which could be very subdued as far as, especially what Izzy's going, oh, okay, I get it now. Even though you're going, wait a minute, something's going on. and it's, like I said, it's a very unique or very typical story, but they do it in a very unique way that is not like what we see all the time.
They have discussions, and
Yes.
it's not like they're fighting and yelling. They're actually being honest with each other and having these realizations, because as Izzy realizes, like, yeah, why don't you tell me what happened to Amber's uncle? It's like, oh, why don't you tell me what happened to the guy who owned that house? It's like, don't know. It's like, yeah, don't know.
But Izzy also lies in that she doesn't say where she's been, you know, like she sneaks out and has these meetings with her friend and then, you know, comes back and she's like, well, what'd you do today? And there was a part of me, I was like, oh man, I wish you could, you know, go back to that time when you could tell your parents anything. But you learn that, oh, if I tell them certain things, they're going to get angry or they're going to restrict me. And so it's best for me that they not know. And you know, it just that subtle deception that goes back and forth between parent and child. I just found that fascinating, and the way it plays out.
Yeah, because it does such a good job of encapsulating that moment where you're trying to pull up the anchor that your parents set for you and then kind of, you know, make your own way out in the world. And I love that, you know, I feel like, at least for myself, a big chunk of my teenage years were spent kind of building, you know, you go to your room and you listen to your music and you're building some sort of identity for yourself in these quiet moments where your parents are like not paying that much attention to you. You're living under their roof and you're dealing with all their rules, but there's something bigger that's brewing. There's your identity that's kind of cooking up in the background and they're not there for it because you're doing it yourself. And I love that the film builds that little microcosm in where the mother's like, what is this? Where am I? What is this? It's like, that is a metaphor for the reality that we tend to build as teenagers for ourselves. It's like, oh, this is me, Mom.
Yeah.
You know?
I thought that scene was interesting too. Again, spoiler, because this is spoiler. Because you have Izzy, and then Amber is actually Toby's other daughter. Right. So then you have Izzy, who then destroys Amber, and the mom is watching that, and I'm like, I mean, there's a lot of levels regarding that. Like, one, you're seeing your daughter have this huge power moment and stuff, but then as an actual mother, like going and seeing what she's doing to, we don't know as an audience your other daughter, but just some other woman. It's like, that's a fine line of like some crazy shit going on right there. Like, my God.
Well, since we've got the banner up, did they say anything about the building of that kind of like weird underworld hell that we kind of see at the end of the film? Because I was like, what is even going on here? Like, it's like you enter into like this fleshy David Cronenberg, you know, terrain. And I was like, okay, I know this has like a low budget. So how did they pull that off?
That I don't remember them talking about that. I just love the fact that she just had that power that you knew. Like, I mean, yeah, she's definitely not been eating maggots, and like how many other people are going missing that she's, and I feel like the mother is definitely realizing like, okay, there's probably a lot of other people that are gone missing that for her to make this like, oh crap.
Yeah.
You know, there's that one scene too. I forgot about this until just now, but what you just said made me think of it. Just talking about sort of some of the transgressive moments where it's like, you know, the fact that they are a family has to be weird. Like, I can't even begin to fathom in any world, this one or anyone I can imagine, where me and my mom roll around and vomit blood into each other's face.
I totally forgot about that until I rewatched it. And I'm like, oh my God. And then just like,
they got to have fun Thanksgiving parties.
Ain't it the truth?
But at the same time, you can only do that with someone that I feel like that you truly love, to like do that and laugh. I mean, I think we've all been on enough movie sets that look, throwing up, I mean, you get down and dirty with different things, but like throwing up stuff on someone's face and then just like, okay, and cut, get this off me. But yeah, to laugh at that, it's like, yeah, we're family.
That's why they both did it. We're like, okay, if you're gonna throw up on me, I get to throw it right
Here's
back
payback.
at you.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I also think that it's even more incredible that there's this family unit that again, it's not just like the father is the director and the creator and he's just working with his family. Right. Everybody's doing everything. So it really is interesting to have found out how much everybody is actually doing. Is it really that much of a cooperative element? Yeah. And it again, to Aaron's point, to think of me working with my family on making something like that, oh hell no, we wouldn't have gotten past the writing stage.
Yeah.
Zelda was doing all the drone work and stuff, and she talked about like she'd just gotten the drone and was messing around with that, and then just playing around with the special effects, and then taking it, I think, to another lab to like do the finishing touches, but then also working with the cinematography and stuff, and really like moving. I mean, from what they did with The Deeper You Dig and like exceeding like that, which I just thought the cinematography was fantastic.
Yeah.
Like it just beautiful work, like just the slow moves in the house, and it just the use of natural light. I mean, that's not easy to do, to capture like that with the budget they have. And I mean, I think this is what more people should watch and emulate, rather than let's go back to the 80s and have a bunch of girls with their tits bouncing around. I mean, I'd rather see people try and replicate this.
Well, the visual effects, I love the fact that, I mean, there's such a subtle quality to them, but each scene feels different. It doesn't feel like it's all painted with one color. It's like, we have like the rock scenes are totally different than the forest scenes, which are different than the hell scenes, which are different than the flashback scenes. And it's like there's a real texture to all of it. I was really knocked out by it. So
You got a quick question to see if I picked this up or if I'm delusional, but every time they went in and got the key, she sets it on the table. And at some point, there's like a bunch of keys on that table.
there's always a bunch of keys on the table. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. But is it, they never show them locking the door and putting the key back. So is that like a new key every time? And those keys are just been piling up?
That's what I thought they were. It's like each time she go, because it's like all about the book and the safety of that kind of like their family book of shadows and stuff like that. So it's not like you go in there every day or stuff. And I felt like that was showing each time she went in, like, this is a new key, and like, what does that mean?
I thought there was an open spot on the table that she set it down into, but I've only seen it the one time.
I thought this last time, I thought it looked like there was a bunch of keys, because she kind of just tosses it on the table.
Uh-huh.
But you never see them put the key back.
Right.
And that last time I went, wait a minute, is that like a new key each time? And where the hell are those coming from?
Well, one more reason to go back and watch this movie.
Yep.
Yes.
One of many.
One of many. Yeah. Tough.
Well, thank you again, everybody. So this is Scare-A-Thon 2023, benefiting the Women's Reproductive Rights Assistance Project. Again, the link to donate is below in the description. Please make a contribution. And we will have our guests back again for future episodes. But until next time, keep searching, keep exploring, and keep sharing the scare.